Hello, my dear church boys, and welcome back to yet another episode of Saint Robert's Daygame and Dating Podcast. And this week, I'm chatting with a guy who's in late 40s and is having wild adventures with girls in their early 20s in deep Ukraine. His stories are incredible. I coached him a few years back in Warsaw in Poland, and after reaching out to him just to kind of find out how he's doing, how things are, and after I heard the stories he's having, I thought I have to talk with this guy on my podcast because I thought you guys would love these stories. So we did a nice interview for you guys. Before jumping into the interview, a few quick updates about coaching spots and things like that. September is fully booked and I'm leaving Europe to go to Latin America in mid-October. So the last coaching spots in Europe this season are early October in Riga, Latvia. Then I'm heading down to Argentina. I'll be there for a month where I have several students booked. All the spots there are already taken. After that, I'm considering spending a few more weeks somewhere in Latin America, maybe a bit more time in Argentina, maybe going to Brazil, maybe Colombia. I haven't decided yet. So if you want to learn Daygame with me in any of these locations, just let me know, because if I have a student in any of these places, it just will help me make up my mind where I want to go. And then December-ish, I'll be back in Europe and we'll start coaching again here. There's a link in the description where you'll find all the information about coaching, how it works more or less, the average pricing, etc. And then you can go over all of that. If everything sounds nice, you can apply for a free call where we will get to know each other so we can kind of understand what's the best approach in terms of coaching for you. And you can ask any questions you have about it to understand if this is the right decision for you. And that's it. Let's jump into the interview, which as usual when I have guests on is audio only to preserve the privacy of my guest. And we're here with a guy who has chosen a very Ukrainian pseudonym, Dima. So, dude, where are you right now?
I'm in a little small city in the Ukraine.
But we're not talking like city with 5,000 people, right? We're talking like a decent city where you can actually go out and do things. We're not talking a village, right?
Correct. There's enough people that you meet new girls, but you also run into old ones that may have rejected you and changed their minds later, which is one of the reasons I have loved it.
Nice. And how long have you been living there?
I've been here about 7 months.
In that city, yeah?
Yep. And before this, I was in Kyiv for about 8 months.
So you spent around almost 1.5 years living in Ukraine. Is that accurate?
Yep.
And you have a living permit, you have what is that, residency or whatever it's called, you have that sorted out as well, right?
Yeah, I'm going through a renewal process right now, actually. I renew it each year.
That's super cool. So you see, someone's still staying in Daygame in Ukraine. But I understand you are in sort of like the part of Ukraine that's relatively safe, where you don't have crazy shit happening and you're not approaching during sirens going off or anything like that, or
I mean, you have sirens going off, and there was one building here that was hit, but generally the city has only been hit once the whole war. Kyiv was definitely more dangerous, more adrenaline. In fact, in January, the reason I left was I felt the vibrations, and I was walking down the street all alone. And I was like, hey, where's the bomb shelter? There's one dude. He's like, right there, get there now. And I'm like, do they have internet? He's like, no. I'm like, nope, I'm going to the next one. And I found one 5 minutes later.
Okay, so why are you there? Is it the beautiful girls? Is it the adrenaline? What are you doing there?
Oh man, it's a combination of things. I after I had gotten divorced, a friend recommended Odessa, Ukraine, before the war, and I went there and I started learning Russian for 3 months, and I ended up meeting a girl, and I moved to Kharkiv, and I lived there for about 3 months before the war, and I left a month before the war, so it kind of established some roots for me here. I had a lot of friends from those ventures, and then I bounced around the world, a different city, a different, every month. And it just felt like the culture fit more than anything. And I just really liked it. And I could speak the language, and I didn't really want to start over and learn Romanian again or something like that. So it was a combination of girls, the speaking, the friends, a whole bunch of different things.
And okay, so let's before we jump into kind of the day game and dating the wild stories, let's give guys like a short kind of description of who you are, just so they understand who they're listening to. So how old are you, more or less, like approximately? What industry are you in? What do you do? Kind of stuff like that, just the basics.
Yep. I'm almost 50 years old now. I'm a software engineer. And I actually didn't drink until I was like 22. I was a nerd that played a lot of sports, right? To give you an idea of kind of my personality, but I was always kind of a high energy individual. And what else were you looking for?
So approximate age, industry you're in, just the basics. Nothing, no need for, the whole life story, but just so that the guys have like a general idea. So you're originally from the States?
Yes. Yep. Born and raised in the States. I went to China. I'm fluent in Chinese in college and university. I lived there for a year and then came back and have been itching to go back. I have two kids. They're in university now.
Okay. Well, having met you, multiple occasions actually, and having coached you, when you said you're like the geeky guy who plays sports, I thought, well, that kind of puts together the image, because you are the mix of these two things. You are still this sort of geeky guy, but you're also this guy who like goes places and does shit and is like crazy adventurous and has all of these stories. It's sort of a mix of both of these worlds, which is kind of interesting. So, okay, how did you start day gaming? How did you find that?
After I got divorced, I just felt needy and I knew I needed something to change. And I did, my first thing was in the US. I did this like 7-day boot camp in Vegas. That was the closest thing. Europe just seemed to stretch at the time. I didn't have a remote job. Now I do. And that sort of kickstarted everything. I did that probably almost like 3 to 6 months after my divorce. I was desperate to get training in something, because even from sports, I like to get coached. You learn much faster.
So that was your beginning. How long before we met was that? Because we worked with you in Warsaw, if I recall correctly.
Right. I want to say a year or 2 years later, maybe 2 years later, because I'd get pulled back into life and then I'd start doing day game and pushing myself again. And it was kind of like a back and forth process.
So if you already had coaching, why did you decide to work with me in Warsaw when we met there?
Well, it's like, why do when NHL players hire hockey coaches, right? Even to this day, they still hire coaches. Why? Because coaches can accelerate your learning. They can point out the details that you're not getting right. A lot of people are like, I'm going to go at my own. In ice hockey, you can go at your own. You're not going to level up as fast.
Yeah, you're gonna play in your on your frozen pond in whichever state it's called. I have no idea.
Minnesota, Wisconsin, usually.
Yeah, wherever that guy from Friends was from, the geeky, the tall lawyer guy. So how were you doing in day game before we met? Because I don't remember that part. Were you getting any lays or any stories at that time of your life?
It's always hit or miss for me, because I don't remember. I've been extremely picky. I've always been having trouble lowering my standards. Even now, like the girls we'll talk about and on the call today, they're like, one of them is one of the hottest bodies I've ever slept with. Right, one of probably 3 top bodies I've ever slept with, and all 3 of those bodies, like I can't even say one's better than the other.
Okay. So right now, when you're in Ukraine, you're sort of in this mid-sized city. So what does it look like in terms of dating? Are you meeting the girls out on the streets? Is it more kind of nightlife, things like that? Is it online? What's happening?
I never do online. I just can't. Anytime I try, I give up within like 2-3 days. I hate it. It's a mix. It's a mix of a lot of stuff. There's a few like bars, they kind of like an American style bar that sometimes I meet women there. There's some high end ones. There's some low end ones that I've met women there. I picked up a waitress and we went out a few times. One time I was with a buddy and we were in a pub and I saw this cute, really hot girl, this dancer. I found out later she was a dancer, and just kind of, put a fish hook out there really quick and giving her a compliment, and then went and had beers with my friend. And on the way out, ended up getting her, Instagram then. Things like that. I've done approaches on the street too. That I don't do as much though. I usually use natural approaching more and more, like sitting in a cafe and there's a hot girl next to me.
Well, yeah, obviously that's kind of expected. But so what I want to understand with you is when we were working with you in Warsaw, I remember you had a very specific style of day game. You were kind of doing your own thing while still kind of following the structure, and the stuff that was working for you, for some other guys it wouldn't work, but it fit very well with your personality. So I want to kind of get an idea of how did you do specifically with day game approaches, after we worked with you in Warsaw, because we haven't talked about that quite much.
So in Kyiv, I did a lot. I met a guy there and he was doing that. There's a main street called Krstatek in
Uh-huh.
Kyiv. And there's this girl sitting on benches, and benches, waiting to be picked up. And there's girls walking, and we would sit there and we would stop girls. A lot of them were under 18, which was annoying. You basically have to qualify right away. And here you can ask, are you in school? That means they're in high school. It doesn't mean they're in university here. In fact, it's offending if you tell someone that's in university they're in school here, which is different than from America. That took me a while to get used to. So you can use that as a qualifier to know, oh, these girls are too young. And so we did that for a while. But again, most of the girls that I've been meeting that are really gorgeous and I end up on dates with day game has helped. I won't say it hasn't helped. It helps you a lot. It's like, it trains you for the more natural situations, which is to me has been very useful. And so my day game has trailed off unless sometimes once in a while there's this girl I'm like, oh my God, I have to talk to her for some reason, and I will still kind of do that. But otherwise, it's mostly. I was in a pub yesterday, and some guys basically said, "Hey, we know these girls. One of them's single," and they sat the two girls down next to me. And I ended up, speaking to these two girls for 2 hours, and one I'm going out with on Monday.
Yeah, because why I wanted to ask this to you, because I personally, like, I love day game, obviously, but I don't think day game is always the best the way you learn day game. It's not always the best way to use it, or day game in general. I don't think it's kind of hands down the best way to meet girls, but what I do believe is it is hands down the best way to learn to meet girls. And then the skill set you learn, you can then use in any environment, whether that's a bar, a restaurant, street, coffee shop, or whatever. Actually, what I notice is the better the guys get, the more they start approaching in sort of everyday situations. This is what I see with the more advanced guys in our private community. A bunch of them are just, most of their approaching is done in like everyday situations. They've built a kind of, they've made it a part of their everyday life in a way that works. Because if a beginner starts doing that, that's just not gonna work. He needs to learn what to do. He needs to become good at it. But once you're at a certain level, you can definitely make it sort of a part of your life. But
Yep.
again, as I said, beginners shouldn't do that.
Yep.
Okay. Do you know your lay count right now, or are you even aware of it, or?
I don't keep track of that. In fact, I have trouble count. I don't sleep with too many women. I'm extremely picky. Like I said before, I think this year I maybe slept with 5, I think. And I'm
Okay,
not even
still
sure.
still what most guys sleep with in a lifetime.
I Huh. Because I had that girlfriend from until because she moved here with me from Kyiv because I'm moving, it's dangerous, right? So she moved here because she basically could do university remotely. So she moved here, and I think it ended maybe March, yeah, March around that time frame or something like that. So I just been
So let's
sleeping.
let's talk about that girl, because there is a story behind that girl.
Yeah. So I'll start from the beginning there. I met her in Kyiv. She was at this club called Boho in Kyiv, and I saw her with this boy, and you could tell the boy was needy as hell, right? I'm like, dude, that is not going to work out. There's no way he's going to end up with her. And finally, like when he left, went to the bathroom or something, like I went over and talked to her. I'm like, I forgot what I said. I said, like, can you get your Instagram? She's like, I'm with a boy. I'm like, so give me your Instagram. And she gave it to me. And then we went out a few times. Then we ended up sleeping together. And the only reason she became my girlfriend was because I'm like, look, I'm moving. And if you're going to like live with me, you have to be my girlfriend. Like, it'd be ridiculous for me to be paying you to sleep with other guys. So she moved here. Now it gets really interesting after the ending as well, because it's not quite the ending for a while. We moved into January to a small little city, and she loved it. I mean, it was great compared to her city. Her city is boring as crap. I went there once. And she ended up sleeping with another guy. And I found out, like, when she came home, there were like 3 red flags. And I backed down like, oh crap, you had sex with a guy. And she, threw this hissy fit, blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure we can be together. I'm like, okay, good deflection. You go decide. And like, she moved out and whatever, you run out of a thing. Anyways, we had theater tickets, in 2 weeks. So I broke up with her, obviously. And we had theater tickets in 2 weeks in Kyiv. And she's like, well, what about the tickets? I have a ticket. You have a ticket. I'm like, I'll book a place. And so 2 weeks, I end up sleeping with her again. Can't help myself. And she's like, can I come back with you? And I'm like, no. And she's like, I'll do anything. I'm like, anything? And it's funny because when I tell this story to girls are like, oh, you mean like anal? I'm like, no way. I'm not next level stuff. I'm like, find a girl. And she goes, no. I'm like, okay, we're done. And she goes, no. Wait. How about my best friend? I'm like, nah, she's ugly. And so he spent 2 months. Oh, I forgot. I missed a part. I actually said, look, if you want to keep seeing me, introduce me to the guy before. And at this point, she still hadn't admitted that she slept with him. So she introduced me to the guy here, who I'm now like really good friends with. And we walk, me and her walk in, and so I go, bye. You need to leave now. And she's like, what? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, no. And I'm like, then we're done. And so she leaves. And so I'm like, I ordered 2 tequila shots immediately, and it's like lunch with me and this guy. And then I just start talking to this guy, and of course he doesn't tell me the truth. She's asked him to lie for him. And so we become friends. And so we start hanging out and whatnot. So then, it ends up in that every month I'm maybe it's like every 3 weeks we go on like a trip. So it's basically like friends with benefits now at this point, right? I'm not gonna have you be my girlfriend. You're not gonna be living with me because you're just gonna fuck other guys. And, so we start doing that for a while. And, then this one weekend she texts that same guy. And of course he tells me, right? Which is just, and I'm like, dude, what the hell? And, cause there was maybe a chance we get back together, but probably not. I had like,
wait, let me ask you a question. Up until this point, has the guy like come clean and said that he slept with a girl?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. We'll
Yeah.
continue.
I found out a different way, but yeah. Anyways, and so it kind of went on for a bit where we just go on a trip and I'd sleep with her. Right up until the point, I have another really good friend that she has met once, and she was calling me. She's like, I'm really sad, blah blah blah, and I'm like, well, and she's like, I want to go to this bar, this K41 place, and I'm like, well, Sasha's going. You remember Sasha? She's like, yeah. I'm like, you can go with Sasha. And I've told her, you sleep with any of my friends and we're done, right? Because my mind works too hard, and like if I'm sleeping with you, I will literally imagine you sleeping with my friend, and I can't help myself. Sleep with someone I can't picture their face, and then it's okay. So anyways, she ends up sleeping with him, and of course he's my good friend, so he tells me, and so I told Sasha, I'm like, block Anya, and I tell the other guy, block her, because I'm cutting like all ties to her. And so then I broke up with her. I said, okay, both these guys blocked you. She's like, what? I slept with them and they blocked me. And so then it finally basically ended and came to an end. I've just been dating other people.
Yeah, well, Ukraine is a wild place. People imagine Ukrainians being these pure angels, because you go on a date with them, and if you don't know what you're doing, it's gonna be pretty hard to sleep with a lot of them.
Yes.
They're not the easiest to sleep with, but
yes, they're tough.
But
they're ridiculous.
Once you understand how things work, you can at least. I'm curious about hearing your view on this, but what I realized is because I did a podcast episode while I was living in Kharkiv for 3 months before the war. I did a podcast episode called The Ukrainian Struggle about how I went on 8 first dates to nowhere. And I was just pissed and gonna try to figure out what's happening. But the next podcast episode was about all the wild adventures I had after I figured out how things work. And the thing was, once I figured out how things work, it was sort of figuring out with which girls am I wasting my time and just cutting the looses, kind of, just you do kind of one date and you're like, okay, I'm never seeing her again. It's a waste of time. It's not going to happen. I was being more direct with them. And then kind of what to do with the ones that are princessy, and then the ones who kind of, they would be down for it, but they need a bit more time. What I didn't do is I never went on more than 3 dates, and there were some occasions where now I think, okay, it would have been a good idea with like a certain chick to go on like more dates and kind of do that, but it's sort of tricky. But yeah, basically it comes down to figuring out where you're wasting time, figuring out what to do with the princessy ones, and then sleeping with the ones that are fine with sleeping with you, but you still need to kind of, it's not going to be as direct as them coming back to your place and boom, that's it. So I don't know. What's your view on all of this?
Yeah, I feel like I'm learning, you learn Daygame, right? But then I feel like I'm learning that Ukrainian culture because it is a big, big leap. And then on top of that, I'm learning like the Ukrainian language. So I totally agree with like putting limits and boundaries. In fact, there was this one girl, she's a dancer here. And I was meeting a friend who he doesn't speak any English. So I'll buy him free beer all night long and I get to practice Ukrainian cheaper than a teacher. The hourly rate is great for me and he gets to get drunk. And so we meet at this pub and when I walk in, I see this really hot chick. And so, I drop a line, I pay her a compliment and then I just bug her off, right? The fish hooks in. And, so we're speaking Ukrainian the whole time, and girls can tell that I have like an accent, of course. And finally, on the way out, I actually get her Instagram, and we end up going out. And the first date, it's normal. I didn't really feel that I could kiss her, so I didn't even try the first date. I tried the second date, and it was one of those head nods away. And I tried the third date, head nod away. Except this time, like okay, and Ukrainian, I'm like, so do you just want to be friends, or are you romantically interested? And she goes, la, 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 just give me a bunch of bull crap. And I'm like, look, that's not an answer. And then she's like, there's lots of boys, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, that's still not an answer. And then she's like, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, understood. And I just walk away. And I literally walk home. 2 days later, I see the same girl. Like, what the hell? She's drunk, comes up to me. I see her again, like the next day. We end up going out again. But in my mind, okay, we're just friends. I'll treat you like I treat my friends. I'll pay you for free beer because I've told her the story. I give free beer if you don't speak English because I get lots of practice, right? And I still do that. And I remember, I'll never forget, she's like, I'm hungry. And I'm like, great, you can buy yourself food. But she kept going out with me. I wish I would have waited longer on that one. There was like a real connection, but I think I was patient and putting too much boundaries, like you said. She was interested, but she was definitely being pursued by this other guy and was having trouble making that decision. Right now, she finally made that decision 3 weeks ago or so. But I had basically stopped dating her probably like 2 months ago because I know now she has a boyfriend because I like reached out again. Because once in a while I'll reach out to these girls. It's great being in a small city because you will run into them again and again, even if you don't want to. Pluses and minuses, I guess. It's actually plus. I think you just have to be a beast when you meet them again and never be sad. Like never pretend, like don't show them your heart is broken if it's broken, right? And you can always, that door will always open back up.
Yeah. So wait, you ended her seeing just as a friend. You never slept with her, yeah?
No, I never slept with that one. No.
Okay. Yeah. I would stick with buying beer for guys, but not for chicks. Because it's still free alcohol, and then she can still kind of use you for that. But then again, if
I'm using her for the language, so
yeah, you're using her for the language, so it's a tricky thing, if you don't care about the money and if you're never paying for food or anything else. I think that's kind of your call on just using that as a cheap Ukrainian practice. I think that's kind of fun. And I know that you said you had one more case where you at least tried setting up a threesome.
Right. So, when I was in Kyiv, before the girl that became my girlfriend, I was dating this other girl that I met at a club. And this club is basically really interesting because you get there at 11:30. They lock you in at midnight because you're not, there's curfew here. Everyone has to be off the streets at midnight. I've gotten caught by the police, I don't know, 8 times on the streets. Right. And I'm like, I'm American. And, they're just like, get home now. And they get all mad, but they don't do anything to the foreigners. It's otherwise, if you're not a foreigner, you're a Ukrainian guy, then a lot of times they're carting you off to the war. So the guys are a lot more careful. But they lock you in at midnight and they open the doors at 5 a.m. So you're stuck in there for 5 hours. Usually I've gone to one of these places and I made them let me out one time. I'm like, dude, I'm American. Nothing's going to happen. And so I'm in that club and I know the DJ there, and I've really never done cocaine or ecstasy and any of that stuff until Ukraine. Actually, I've been a good boy my whole life, and I'm like, so I dabbled in it when I was in Kyiv. And I don't do any. I don't even know if they have that stuff here, to be honest. And anyways, in Kyiv, I tried cocaine that night, I remember, and so I met her, and she did one line, and she's never done it before, and I guess she does ecstasy a lot, and so when she came home, it was interesting because she definitely wanted to have sex. She'd like rub her ass on my dick, and I didn't know it. I'd try to have sex, and I was like, no, and then she'd do it again. I'm like, and she's like, no, and then she'd do it again. I'm like, no, I'm like, okay, this is weird. And then she did it again, and it was really weird that the like there's 4 times, right? And finally, I think she started realizing that, like, as an American, you're so afraid that someone's going to say rape, right? We're really afraid of that. So anyways, we ended up finally sleeping together. But a lot of girls, that's the way they are. You have to, it goes back to the culture. You have to do things in a fun way so they don't say no. And I don't have that 100% figured out yet, but it's really interesting because you get a lot more, I would say, resistance than like when you're in America in those final stages sometimes, which is very different. Anyways, so she was into ecstasy, so that puts me in a zone where I don't want her to be my girlfriend. She's just a girl that I would sleep with. And so one day I was talking to my buddy. He's like, yeah, prostitutes are like $150 here, right? And so I offered. I was like, you know what? I'll give you $100, which is a lot of money for her. It's a lot of money. Every time you find a girl for us. And she was her face. She was hurt. And the next day she's like, I'm in love with another guy. And the next day she's like, are you okay? And I'm like, I'm so. And she's like, why? I'm like, well, you broke up with me and I liked you. And she's like, oh, maybe I made a mistake. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me think about it for a week. And then a week later, she ended up like, living with that guy. And I was like, okay. And like, we can be friends. And she's like, no, we can't. And I'm like, okay. And she blocked me. I was like, okay, whatever. But 6 months later, she reaches out to me. She unblocks me and starts talking to me again. And she's like, hey, remember that question you asked me about another girl? I'm like, yeah, of course I remember. She's like, I have one. I'm like, let's go. And so she brought this girl to Lviv. And I met her in Lviv, and they were going to continue on to me with me to this smaller city. And what was really interesting is the first night, I wasn't drinking the first night. I didn't want to drink. I don't know why. But so I was buying them drinks, and they were getting a bit drunk, and of course they get in a fight. And everything goes south on the first night. And I'm like, crap. And in the first day, I don't think I escalated enough. I should have, in these situations, the girl's introducing you to another girl, you can escalate faster. I just wasn't used to that. My only threesome before, was in Colombia, and it was more random, right? And it was both the 2 girls. I hadn't slept with either of them. So it's really interesting being introduced to another girl. It was the first time for me. And then the next day, thankfully, we recovered. We went to the aqua park, but we did so much stuff because I always forget that how much high energy I am, like walking around the city. And the girls here, they don't do sports generally, right? They're not like me. So I'm used to someone like my sister. And so by the end of the night, they were like done. They were worn out. What was really interesting though, is they both took off all their clothes except their panties. So that now they have no bra on. And I forgot to mention, during that day, I was escalating some. So I was slapping both of their asses. I was walking around the city with 2 girls around my arms, and both didn't speak English, which I love. And they even made a comment of like, I feel like we're walking around with mafia, which is awesome. Like great experience there. And unfortunately, the one who she's off drugs now. which is, I think, is good for her. But the one who did drugs all the time, the ecstasy and shit, she said that she's not going to be able to go on to the small city with us and she was going to have to leave early. So I'm like, crap, I got like this one day to close, but I had warned them all out. Um, and so when we get back, when the new girl's in the middle and she's actually hotter than the original girl. So I start with just putting my arm on her breast and trying to play with that and then try to put my arm down her panties. But she like turns over and I'm like, okay, nothing's going to happen. Like they were spent. Like we went to the aqua park, walked. I was like, crap. And so the next morning I walked, the old girl that I'd already slept with to, her taxi and she went home and I came back and then I ended up sleeping with, I came in, I started kissing her on her back and then boom, it happened. I just slept with the new girl. And then the story gets a little even more crazy because she came with me to my small city, right? So she's here and I paid for like the tickets to get to Lviv, paid for her to come here, right? And we spend the day together, walking around doing stuff. And because my expectation is, okay, maybe I can pull this into, I go back to Kyiv and I can still have a threesome now that I've slept with one, I've slept with the other. I haven't asked the one, like, have you guys slept together yet? Because I wasn't sure what the logistics were of like the previous relationship there. And so, but at the end, I go buy shots. She's like, can you buy shots? And the bars close at like 11. And so I go 11:40, I buy shots. 10 minutes later, the shots are there. I'm like, where the hell is she? I'm like, I text her, hey, where are you? 20 minutes later, I'm like, what the hell? Okay, I'm going home and I text her. I'm like, look, you can find your own way home. Let me know if you want to drop your stuff off, right? Because I don't deal with that stuff. Like it's too disrespectful. I have boundaries. And so the next day, when I drop her stuff off, she's like, where do you want to meet? But we meet at this coffee shop. I give her stuff. And I just say bye. And her mouth just drops to the floor. She's like, what? And she texts me. She's like, how am I supposed to get home? I'm like, look, you have a new guy. You're his responsibility now, not mine. And she's like, what do you mean? Like, and she's like, I didn't have sex. I'm like, I don't care what you did. You left me at the bar. He can take care of you now. And it's funny because I still know Susha. But that's the kind of crazy stuff. I won't put up with stuff like that, right? It's just so disrespectful. Leave me standing on the street for 30 minutes.
Yeah, well, that was probably a different experience. Yeah. So you've seen some positive experiences. You've seen them kind of leaving you hanging. Yeah, it's kind of all over. Yeah, the Ukrainians are a sort of like a different thing. Yeah, the thing is, I think the tricky part is paying for all of this stuff. I think it's too much. I like, but then again, it works. Like you're banking them and you're having all the fun, but I do think it kind of maybe they put you a little bit in that box, like the guy that's gonna be fun to hang out with because he's gonna take us places and buy us shit, like not buy shit, but like get us drunk and whatnot. But then again, what matters at the end of the day is a chick bringing over her friend that you get to bang, and okay, it ends with like some shit show, but you very nicely, put down the boundaries and said, this is not okay, fuck off, get back however the fuck you want to get back. That's really cool.
Honestly, I feel like I live in two different worlds. I know these like these girls that are like want to sleep with people, right? But then there's these other girls that I date. Like, okay, there's this waitress one, and for a month she's really hot, and I was just like, oh man, you're so short, right? But eventually some chemistry developed, and I did finally ask her out. And asking around, because it's a small city, it's really easy to ask around. I'd see like this guy walk her home, that guy walk her home, and I'd talk to those guys because I knew them. She wasn't letting any of them sleep with them, right? Whereas like this other girl that I had slept with here, dude, I know 4 other guys she slept with, right? And so I live in that world of dating those like nice girls, which I really like. And then I live in this other world a lot due to Daygame of these girls that are sleeping with everybody.
Wait, but with the waitress that hadn't slept with all the other guys, did you end up sleeping with her?
Not yet. No, that one's still sort of in limbo. She started there was a window of opportunity that kind of closed down on me. And I missed it because well, frankly, I was busy with another girl. Um, and I wasn't, I'm still kind of in sort of limbo with this other girl that I'm trying to get, and I don't know what's going to happen there. But I don't know. There's still a chance that might happen, but she's one of those. If she sleeps with you, like she wants a relationship.
Yeah. It's kind of obvious with this type. You said the other guys you're meeting, are they also, kind of hitting on chicks or just some random dudes that you met?
So one in Kiev, we'd go out all the time and try to hit on chicks, but then we drifted apart because I started doing like a lot more natural because it started to work a lot better for me in Kiev. A lot more like I go to the cafe or I go here and just make.
You
it
mean
part of my
not
life.
natural? You mean like natural as in natural everyday setting?
Yeah, natural is like I'm going about my life and like, oh, there's a hot girl right here. Let me talk to her or something.
Yeah. Okay. So just doing your everyday stuff. Yeah.
Right.
So that we're not confusing the terms with natural game and things like that.
Right. Whereas he's like, hey, let's do 2 hours of on purpose walking down the street talking to women. Right. And
Yeah.
that's it. Right. And even when he came visited here, he just wanted to do that. And I'm like, dude, I kind of want to enjoy my life. Right. And we can do that while we're enjoying life. But that's all he wanted to do. Right. Is just walk
Yeah.
down the street and try to pick up a girl, walk down the street and try to pick up a girl. I'm like, I want to live my life right now. I'm more and more patient because things are now clicking. Right. So I'm not as, I guess, worried about it anymore.
Yeah, especially if you've had enough lays and you've had all the adventures where you don't really care about getting like new notch every week or new notch every month, where you can just kind of chill, have your mini relationships, travel around the country with the girl, gonna do some fun stuff, meet some new girl here or there. I think at that moment, it's like, okay, you can kind of chill out with your day game and do, or not just day game, but kind of approaching in general. You can just do however much makes sense and you don't have to like be on all the time. I think that's stupid. It's kind of weird. I
Right.
mean, okay, if people want to keep doing that, there's nothing wrong with that, of course, as well. But I see kind of the idea. I see the value of both. Okay. Let me ask you, kind of moving towards the end, let me ask you, if you were to do all of this kind of day game thing again, what things that you did that you have done, you would be like, fuck yeah, these were the biggest kind of things that I did. These were the most important kind of 1, 2, 3, I don't know, things that really took you in the right direction in terms of really learning to meet women.
Well, I would say the first thing is like I'm so happy I'd do it all over again, which is just the approach. It's the worst part, right? And you have to do it. And day game is the perfect, day game and day game coach is the perfect way to push yourself to do it because doing that makes it easier in a natural setting. Because in a natural setting, it's not as scary when you come up with the right, oh, this is going to be a very easy entry, right? Like, oh, she has a dog. Oh, that's easy as heck. Can I pet your dog, right? Things like that. But there's other ones as well. Here it's been interesting. Sometimes I just go with, I like your coat, and I pause, and they take it from there, and I'm like, okay, let's go.
Mhm.
And I don't have to do much work, which has been really, really nice sometimes. I would say just that, right? I think just that pushing yourself into that is probably the biggest. It's 80%, you're 80% the way there. If you just get approaching, then the rest just takes time, right? You get patience and time and practice.
Yeah. Okay. And let's do the same question, but what are maybe some things that where you put in some energy, but now looking back at it, you're like, oh, fuck, that was a waste of time.
I don't know if I have any of those.
Okay. So you've explored different parts of the world. You've explored Latin America. You've explored some parts of Ukraine for dating. What's the plan next? Are there any places that you want to explore? Are there any things or maybe some types of adventures that you still want to gonna do or what's the next goal? What are the next plans?
I don't know. After bouncing around the world for 2 years, it's kind of nice to just stay in one city, make friends locally, and have some more permanent friends. The one of the things that's been really enlightening here, and it took me, I think, a while to realize, is how important it is to have two guys go out multiple times now. And we haven't succeeded yet, but I have another American friend. He's succeeded many times. He's in the military. But you pull two girls back to your apartment, right? And you do that right around 11 o'clock when the bars are closing and before midnight. And any of the girls that are sitting on benches at 11 are basically like, yeah, we don't want to go home. And so it's just a matter of, does the right guy come along to say, hey, let's go back to our apartment and have fun. And then once you get them back there, that's another story that I haven't succeeded in yet, but maybe in the next, few months here, I'll succeed a few times.
Well, so is that like a foursome? Is it a threesome with two girls? What's the plan there?
A lot of times, also I have two beds. So a lot of times it's just pull one of the girls into my bedroom and he can have the other girl in the family room.
Okay.
And
I like the plan.
That's what my friend does all the time. I lost a really good wingman because of the war. He moved to Poland to get away from it so he doesn't get recruited in the military. And he would have been like a really good wingman, but unfortunately he's not in the country. So now I had another good one. He's from Ecuador and he speaks great Ukrainian. But he had to move to Kyiv. And so I'm like, crap, now I'm in search of like another good one. To start doing that again. I have one more actually, but he has a girlfriend right now for 2 more weeks until she moves to Kyiv. He said he's going to break up with her, and then that should work out for a while. But I'll need to find like another backup in case he moves or something.
How do you have so many foreigners in a small city in Ukraine? What's happening?
It's just one, this guy, and then me. That's it. Actually, I think there's I think it's because of the military. He's military, so he's on the front lines right now. There's another one here, but we never see him. He's very introverted. They're not as well known throughout the city. Because I'm very social. So I went to another city an hour away and someone walked up and like, hey, Dima, how you doing? And I was like, where did we meet? Because I was like, I've never been to this city before. How do you know me?
Wait, and how did you meet with him? Did he know you from your city or?
Yeah, he was at a club here, and I guess he had met me like 3 months ago. Because I get people that have met me like 6 months ago, and they're like, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, crap!" I probably meet like 5 new people a day. I'm still meeting new girls, which surprises me because it's like I run into the same girls, but then I meet new girls still. It's really a strange size for a city, strange dynamic.
Nice. Well, you're definitely a guy who, kind of said, fuck this to the copy-paste boring lifestyle, kind of looked at what you want to get out of life and then kind of went for it. And now you're living this kind of adventurous dream in this place in Ukraine. It definitely sounds amazing. I hope this inspires some other guys to take more action and kind of look for what they really want to do in their life. Any last words, any last comments, any last wishes before we wrap up?
Oh, yeah. A top tip for software engineers. Find a remote job. And then every company's like, you need to work in the U.S. No, you don't. You just need to be taxed in the U.S. and they won't care. I do that all the time. I get a remote job and I'm like, don't worry, I'm taxed in Florida. Or I'm taxed in, pick a state, try to get to Florida because they don't have state taxes. I got my taxes back by changing my residence to there. And don't worry about taxes in the other countries. Just bounce around. Then you don't have to pay taxes there.
Boom. Now we're going to have more nomads. Okay, dude, thanks a lot for doing this.
Anytime.
And that's it. Thank you for listening, guys. And remember, if you want to learn Daygame with me in October in Europe or in a second part of November in Argentina, Brazil or Colombia, or again back in Europe in December, then there is a link in the description where you'll find all the information about coaching. Thank you for listening and see you in the next episode. Ciao, guys.